Hello and welcome to another episode of Giant Views. My name is Sonia Begeman. I'm the editorial director here at Seed World Group. Joining me today is Donn Cummings, and Donn is actually retired, but he's also very active in the National Association of Plant Breeders and very excited about that program. So glad to have you here with us, Donn. I think first, I'd like to get to know you a little bit better, Donn. So
Sure.
You are retired, but you had influence on the plant breeding society and the plant breeding industry as a whole. So maybe tell me a little bit about your career.
Well, I started at Purdue and got 2 degrees there, and then went to the University of Minnesota for my PhD degree in plant breeding and genetics. I started into the seed industry in 1977 for a little bit in Illinois, but moved back to Indiana, and my career has pretty much been out of Indiana. I started in the seed industry when Pfizer bought Trojan Seed Company out of Minnesota and became Pfizer Genetics. And then that morphed into DeKalb Pfizer and DeKalb, and eventually Monsanto bought DeKalb. So I was a corn breeder for 30 years for the Monsanto organization, and then 7 years more as global breeder sourcing lead, where I worked a lot with the land grant universities and mentored a lot of students in that role and helped many of them establish careers in industry and also academia, but still enjoy a lot of those relationships. In the process at Minnesota, I met Norman Borlaug along the way through a mentoring program there, and he was very student-oriented and wanted to be sure that we had a supply of interested plant science people that would continue the legacy that he built by saving 1 billion lives and earning the World Food Prize in 1970. And it was in 1976 that I first met Dr. Borlaug, and he was very influential at that time, influencing me to want to give back to the generations ahead and start programs like the Borlaug Scholars travel and mentoring program that we have through NAPB now.
So 30 plus years in corn breeding and, an entire career in this industry. You've seen a lot of changes, haven't you?
Well, we lived quite a bit of change. There was change when I started because hybrid seed corn had come into play, and we had gone from 4-way crosses to 3-way crosses to single crosses, and yields have been increasing rapidly, and that's part of the technology that was being transferred to Mexico and other places to try to increase yields in more developing locales. And it really changed when biotech came into play in the mid-90s. And I think before that, in 1980, when we became able to patent plants, that stimulated a lot of research investment. So that was part of the interest of Pfizer getting into the seed business and then out, because the seed business is complicated. Not everybody can understand how complicated the seed business really is. And I think for that reason, we need a steady supply of professionals that want to invest their lives in understanding that complexity and working on a holistic system-wide basis to keep delivering improved plants to improve lives.
Now, when you look back on your career, I'm curious, because we all have those watershed moments when we just, we're proud of what we've done, or we're proud of some sort of, impact that we've made. I'm curious, what is that moment for you that you're like, you know what, this was a career that I'm happy I went into, and this is why I know it was important?
Well, there's many things that I look back on and take a lot of delight in having done. One of them is delivering a lot of new inbreds and hybrids. I think even before that, as a graduate student, I had part of my thesis research of regenerating whole plants from tissue culture in oats which was kind of the state of the art and science at that point. They had just done that at Minnesota in corn, and the Quaker Oats was supporting my assistantship. And so I think that's a little bit of my grad student legacy, research-wise. And then I think just the ability to generate inbred patents and hybrid patents and see your breeding material results go to global destinations and be utilized. You know that you had to improve the plants over what farmers were existing products that farmers were growing. They had to be better. They had to be proven better. Mm-hmm. And then if they were utilized widely, you could really feel proud, I guess, of having developed something that really benefited lives in many geographies and people you didn't even know. And then I think the other legacy is the student population that I spent quite a bit of time mentoring and doing professional development programs and introducing to industry, and the talent that we were able to put into place for the future has been a real reward, especially as I meet up with many of them a decade later and talk to them and see what great careers they're establishing and the leadership positions that they're in. It's very heartwarming to see all of that.
Oh, I can imagine. I was actually in a program like that early in my career, and not your program, but I know how beneficial they are to people like myself. And I look back a decade later, and it's great. So thank you to people like you who actually invest in the future and in students and things like that. And I think that brings me up to kind of another good question, which is, you're retired, kind of. You've decided to keep yourself pretty busy with the National Association of Plant Breeders. And you mentioned the Borlaug Scholar Program, and you started that, is my understanding. Talk to me a little bit about what you guys are doing with the Borlaug Scholars Program, and what excites you about that.
Well, as global breeder sourcing lead, I had a lot of interactions external to Monsanto, both on land-grant campuses with a lot of academic professors and professionals. And I also had these linkages with associations like the Tri-Societies, Agronomy, Crops and Soils, and also the seed trade through the ASTA Association and NAPB. So I was working across several professional organizations, and that really turned out to be a rich experience, and met a lot of interesting people. I just love the people in ag. I just love the people in plant breeding, and it was such a rewarding career for me. I want students to have that enthusiasm and to work together, because that's really what agriculture does, is work together to improve lives and to make better seeds for farmers. And I think that in the end, with education, are going to be what brings about real change, regardless of the current day politics or whatever else is going on.
Yeah. Well, it's such a noble cause and such an important one, because, you mentioned finding talent and finding students and finding young professionals to fill the roles of people like yourself who are going into retirement is so critical. So I have to ask you a question. This one's going to be controversial. What's your favorite crop?
Well, I'd have to say corn, because I spent most of my life in the cornfield. So that would probably be first choice. And because of the importance of corn around the world, I mean, it's something that's very exportable and has been a huge part of the U.S. economy and global economy. So certainly corn has a warm spot in my heart. But I guess when I moved into the other role and really saw more of a global picture and learned more about vegetables, and especially today seeing all that's going on at the Flower and Vegetable Show with ASTA, and learning about exciting things in the vegetable industry, it's just super rewarding to keep learning about new crops and new opportunities. And beyond that, the flowers enhancing our lives in aesthetic ways, and the need for more tree products and reforestation, there's lots of plants that we use every day, and we don't realize that behind all of them are plant breeders that are working hard to understand the genetics and apply the new tools and make those improvements that farmers expect, and that the most of the general public don't appreciate how complex it is to continue to deliver those improvements.
Well, I'm not surprised to hear you didn't say water hemp, and I knew that one wasn't going to be the favorite for sure. I think I have one last question for you, and it's a pretty important one too. So you're retired and
Yes.
you live in Florida. What's the biggest fish you've caught? And I don't need a fish story; I need a real story. What's the biggest one you've caught?
Well, it probably is a big bull shark. We catch some pretty massive Goliath groupers as well once in a while, so it's pretty big. And still, despite all of that, the big one got away.
Oh, of course, it always does. It always does. Oh, well, I'll have to come visit in Florida sometime to go fishing.
You do that.
Thank you so much, Donn. It's fun to learn more about your career and what you're doing with the National Association of Plant Breeders. And for anyone who's watching, we are going to have a more in-depth story with Donn actually on our website and in print. We're going to really take a deep dive into the history of plant breeding as Donn knows it, and then as others know it as well. It's an exciting time for sure, and we just congratulate you in your retirement and hope you're enjoying every bit of it. But thank you all for joining us for this episode of Giant Views with Donn Cummings, and we hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
And thank you, Sonia. And I'd like to also thank Seed World for being such a great partner and for supporting the NAPB organization and NAPB Borlaug scholars in particular. Thank you for that partnership.
Absolutely. We're happy to do it. It's exciting to see the future of this industry.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.